This is the largest pyramid. I'm pretty sure this is the Great Pyramid of Giza. You can see over here. You can see where the entrance is. It looks like, I don't know, 20 to 30 meters, maybe more. I'm not quite sure off the base of the pyramid. This is where it gets good, though. You look at the pyramid, you can see that all the limestone, except for probably the very last tip here, that probably is still intact for the most part. You can see most of the white limestone exterior has been taken off, but this is where it gets fun. If you look at well, right along about here, you can kind of see this pretty well, I would say. You've got a lower variation right here. You got a lower spot here, and then you got an upper spot here. You got a low tide and a high tide right here, because the middle is not as eroded as the bottom and half part are. That's indicative of a low tide and a high tide, and there's different variations of it. You can also see another layer right along here and here. That's a double. You can see it here and here as well, and here and here. There's multiple forms of what you call high tide, low tide variations as far as elevation goes, showing erosion from what looks like a large body of water that surrounded this pyramid at some point in time. So you got a high tide, low tide, about a third of the way up, another about 3/5 of the way up, and then you got one about 3/4 of the way up, a smaller one here. They all kind of pretty much close to the same depth. You know, the high tides and low tides of a planet, as far as the outer circumference goes of ours, will, even if the elevation of the water changes as far as where it sits on the surface, the high tides and low tides will relatively stay the same in the same location. As far as their distance between the high tide and low tide, because our moon doesn't change its orbit or its distance. You know, it doesn't change its orbital speed or its distance. It's tidally locked, like they say. We only see one side, one face of the moon all the time. So it's tidally locked to the planet Earth as planet Earth spins. And so no matter the elevation that the water was sitting at these different periods of time, you're going to have the same depth of distance between the high tide, low tide, with a extended middle. The extended middle is going to be outward, because they're going to be spending probably 40% of the time on high tide, 40% of the time on low tide, and then 20% of the time at what you would call the equator, you know, kind of like a sine wave. So there'd be less time for erosion happening at the period between high tide and low tide. And that's indicative of the markings here. You can see that high tide and low tide of these lines have definitely caused more erosion during that period than when the water was sitting directly in between the two. You can also see it halfway up time and time again. So it looks like there's 3 to 4 areas, from what I can tell here, where there's different water levels at specific times around the pyramid that were higher than what is sea level right now.